Ted Barrett, welcome back to Sports Spectrum, sir. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. So excited to be back with you. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. It's 2021. Do people call you Dr. Barrett? Like, do you ever have anybody say to you, well, there's Dr. Ted Barrett, because you have your doctorate, but I have not heard people reference that to you, although it sounds pretty cool that there would be an umpire that would be called Dr. Barrett.
Yeah, a lot of them they'll call me they call me Rev, which I love because
That's good.
that's really a cool nickname. But some of them call me Reverend Doctor Crew Chief. They wonder, does the Reverend become before Doctor, and where does the Crew Chief fit in? The Crew Chief's last, so Rev Doc Chief. Some of them call me, so man of many names. But I love it. It's respect. So.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And we're so glad to have you back on the show. I want to tell people we actually had you on. It was episode 21 back in July of 2017. So you shared your entire testimony on that podcast. That was one of our early conversations, but it was an incredible conversation to hear your story. So we won't go into the entire testimony again just to recycle it. But I would say I would love to hear what 2020 was like for you from a spiritual perspective, because it was such a crazy year overall. But what did the Lord show you? What did he teach you in 2020 when you look back at it now?
Well, looking back on it, it's the way the season went. They pulled the plug about the middle of spring training on us, and we're such creatures of habit that we were kind of lost puppies walking around. And then opening day came in April, and we're supposed to be hitting the road, and all these mile benchmarks of the season can't start coming up May, June, and we're still not back out to work. And so it was great that life just kind of slowed down for me. Like for you, I know it's just, you're so busy, you get up in the morning, you're going, and I felt him telling me to slow down and spend more time with him. So that was the good part of it. It was, I got back into studying a little bit. I got back into one-on-one time with guys over the internet. Our small groups were meeting. We started doing a virtual church on Sunday. So we were just like everybody else. We were trying to find ways to fill what we normally do. And then when the season started, we got back out there, as you know, spring training 2.0 in July, and then we hit the road. And it was a strange season with a lot of changes. But spiritually, it was really a good time of. We had so much free time. We were on the phone together. We were in small groups together. We were and our participation dropped off a little bit. But I feel like the guys a lot more guys went all in, and we were able to go deeper. So it really was a rich time for fellowship and study.
Go back to March. I think it was March 10th. Ironically, as we record this is so people know this is December 10th. So it was 7 months ago. I'm sorry, that's 9 months ago now. My goodness. But take me back to March 10th of 2020. And I believe that was the day when the pandemic was just about declared. Everything kind of hit the fan when you saw the NBA cancel. Tom Hanks announced he had coronavirus real early on. And then baseball was had played a couple games that day. And then the next day there was some games scheduled, some were canceled, some were played, but that was it, March 11th. Where were you around that time and kind of finding out all that was going on?
Yeah. So I think around the 7th and 8th, they played a couple exhibition games in Las Vegas, and the A's and the Indians, I believe. So my wife and I had gone out there and done those games, and catching up with my boxing referee friends, and came back, and I had a night game on the 10th with the Cubs out at their ballpark in Mesa, and Rizzo was playing first base, and he turned to me and said, "The NBA is canceled." I said, "You got to be kidding me." And he came back a couple innings later and he said, I don't think we're going to be playing much longer. And that was, I was watching what was going on, but, those of us in MLB and other major sports, man, we just kind of get into this bubble and do our thing and get through our games. So I really wasn't paying as much attention as I should, what was going on nationally. So, then the next day we got the phone call that our games were canceled. Some other games were being played. Some guys got rained out. And then it was just mass confusion. And, I'm on the executive board of our union. So we started having calls with the league and started, then it was just, hey, we'll get started when we can. We'll get back out there soon. We might be delayed a month. And then things just started rolling from there.
Yeah, and then it was 4 months later when you guys had spring training 2.0. What did that look like for you? So did they have to reassign and kind of schedule because you guys had to, I imagine, be in sort of a bubbled area too, right? And get tested just like the players too, right?
Yeah. So for spring training, there was a few of us that live here in Arizona, and we just did the Diamondbacks, and we tested every day. And actually, for me, they did intake testing of everybody in the household. And my youngest son, who had come home from college, he had tested positive. So, out of an abundance of caution, I had to wait. I had to get like 7 negative tests. So I was a little late getting back out there in spring training. But I'm getting anxious now because opening day's approaching. I've got to get out and work. I don't have a machine in my backyard where I can go look at pitches, and
Yeah.
so I was starting to get a little anxiety there, but finally I got cleared and I was able to work some games. And but yeah, we just were to stay at home, to kind of stay in our houses. And then when we hit the road, we were staying in our hotels. So MLB did a great job. We had a health and wellness committee from our union side of just keeping guys safe. But we're proud that we had no umpire test positive during the season. We had 2 false positives, but other than that, nobody tested positive, and which shows that we were dedicated. I think a lot of it was out of some fear. We didn't want to be the ones that messed the season up by testing positive, but
Sure.
yeah, so they did a good job of keeping protocols in place for us and our guys following them.
You mentioned the off season kind of, there's baseball players right now as we're talking that are getting in, the batting cages and getting their hits in, getting their work in. What does an umpire do in the off season to stay in the rhythm? Do you do things? Do you have meetings? Do you simulate games or anything like that?
Yeah, it's really hard to. The only way we can really do our job is by doing games. We can't really practice it. So um, what we do is a lot of the mental side of it. With rules tests, with just getting together, talking umpiring. But from the physical part, we try to work out, try to stay in shape. So when we do get back out there, listen, the toughest part about my job is actually standing for lengths of time. So during spring training, my feet hurt because I'm not used to standing around for 4 hours at a time. So that's kind of how we get back in shape is by doing the games. But a lot of guys, we work out, and we'll get together and talk baseball, and then the league will have some rules gatherings as the season gets closer. And we also have the possibility of us announcing replays. So
Mhm.
we were working on that last year before the pandemic and before the season started. We said, well, we'll put that off till next year.
Yeah. Ted Barrett's our guest here on Sports Spectrum. You also have the shirt I can see you on Zoom wearing at CFC, Calling for Christ. Can you tell everybody? I know you talked about it last time, but just remind everybody a little bit what Calling for Christ is, which I think is an incredible ministry out there that you helped run and lead. And also, what that has been like during a pandemic and staying connected. And even though you also had your retreat that you had to kind of alter a little bit, but still be able to get together. So tell everybody about Calling for Christ.
Yeah, so Calling for Christ, when we came up through the minor leagues, there was really nothing for umpires. I mean, Baseball Chapel and UPI and PAO, we've got these great groups. So they really cater toward the players. And Rob Drake and I in 2003 went to a UPI retreat here in Arizona with the players, and we thought, this just isn't right. Even though I love my brothers that are players, and they love us, but having us together in this setting probably isn't something that we don't have the appearance of favoritism or anything like that.
Sure.
And also, umpires and players are like cats and dogs; they're going to fight during the game. It's just the way it is. So we said, no, we got to be able to do something for ourselves. So we put some emails out, and we got Brian Hummel to come speak, and we got a guitar player from Second Baptist in Houston, and we met in Oklahoma, and we thought, I don't know if anybody's going to show up, but we had 12 guys show up. The next year it doubled. The next year it doubled, and so we just had our 18th retreat, which, like you mentioned, we had to alter. We do a lot of, instead of getting together, and we play a lot of cards during our downtime and hang out and have a few laughs. We had to social distance, but it was still great. We were able to the weather was good in the Dallas area. Sherman, Texas is where we have it now.
Mm.
And it's just a great time of fellowship. We do that once a year, but then during the season, we'll do some Bible studies. We'll do a virtual church on Sundays. We'll um, spring training Bible studies, and man, the guys from UPI and Baseball Chapel, they help us out with a lot of resources and teaching. So we kind of piggyback off what they do. But I'm really proud of not just the guys that have come through the minor leagues and come to the big leagues, become major league umpires that are part of the ministry, but we have guys that have gotten out, become doctors, lawyers, pastors. Guys go to seminary, and they come back and pour into us too. So it's really, as I get to be older now, and I'm kind of reflecting on some of this, it's really a cool thing.
That is awesome. I think it's great. And I love that, it's not this silent ministry, obviously but you're not also promoting it, but it's there. It's clear that you have this opportunity to kind of connect with umpires. Is there a story you can share, and don't name names if you can't, of a guy that you just saw was, kind of invited, maybe a little timid, maybe had a background a little bit in faith, but has really grown and just came to a place where you were like, wow, look at what the Lord's did to that guy?
Yeah, we've got a guy. As a matter of fact, he just made his major league debut this year, which we had a lot of guys opt out because of health reasons and age, and so a lot of guys got to make their major league debuts this year as umpires. And there's one guy, and he came a few years ago, and um, it's invite. So he stood up, and he had not much of a faith background. He had come through a lot of overcome a lot of things in his life, and so he's standing up giving his testimony, and he said, the only reason I can't, he said, I kind of got duped into coming here. He said, another umpire invited him and said, hey, just come, we hang out, we smoke cigars, we ride quads, it's a lot of fun. And he said, I show up and you guys are just talking about Jesus all the time. He said, I felt like I got kind of, hooked into this, but he said, man, this is awesome. And now he's one of our leaders. He leads a study. And so it's cool. We've got guys that come with zero faith background. We've got other guys that have come with, maybe they were younger and they walked away from it. Other guys who maybe had a bad experience. And so it's just cool because we all go through the same thing on the field. And we're just trying to create community and fellowship and bring guys to Christ that don't know him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. What a great example there. Ted Barrett is joining us here on Sports Spectrum. 2020 must have been weird as an umpire because you're used to 50,000 screaming people yelling at you if you miss a call, or in their interpretation of you missing a call, I would say. So you're not hearing fans boo you or scream at you, but you could hear the players, I presume, and the coaches pretty clearly. What was that like, just umpiring in an empty stadium?
It was strange with the cardboard cutouts, and the fans bring so much energy, especially when you get into the big games and the sold out games, the loud, and so it was tough. Sometimes you had to kind of create your own energy in an empty stadium, but yeah, it was weird coming off the headsets and not hear. Usually the home team's going to either boo or cheer depending on your decision, and there was none of that. Yeah, you could hear everything the players were saying. There's a lot of things they said that it's good we didn't know they were saying, and there's other things that were kind of funny. You hear the comments they make to each other, or some of them have a good sense of humor, and you kind of chuckle at some of the stuff they say. But yes, it was definitely different. Walking into ballparks with not fighting the traffic going in, and not, even little things like walking from your locker room to the field, there wasn't a lot of security because there wasn't any fans, nothing was necessary. So yeah, very, very strange, very different. And yet looking back on it, it was kind of a cool experience.
Yeah, well, the playoffs too, right? You did the LCS this year. That had to be just as strange, I would say, even though the pressure of the game, I don't think was any different. There was still a pressure for both teams to perform and to try and get to the next level, but still with no fans.
Yeah, in those LCS games and those big playoff games are always so intense, and the crowd is so into them every pitch, and so this was definitely different. But yeah, the players were playing with a lot of intensity. Everybody knew what was on the line, definitely, and yet there's no crowd reaction, and no yelling and screaming. And then kind of another strange situation we had is there was four of us went to the World Series, and we actually sat in our hotel rooms because if one of the crew tested positive, the four of us were going to go out and work. The problem is, in order for that to work, we couldn't mingle with those guys. So we
Right.
were in the bubble at the hotel at the World Series, and rooting and cheering for our guys to do well. Yet we couldn't go talk to them. So we would just kind of wave at them out of our hotel balcony. And now the four of us could get together, which was good. We couldn't even go to the ball games because we didn't want to get into a place where we would get infected. So
Right.
the four of us would get together and we'd watch the game and cheer for our guys. And it was just it was very strange, but it was fun.
Protocol, right? It's everything you have to do to keep the games going, but to keep everybody safe and have backup plans upon backup plans. You mentioned the playoffs and the intensity. The last time we had you on in July of 2017, we talked about some of the perfect games that you had called previously. I still think you're the only umpire, right, that's had two perfect games that you worked behind the plate still, right? That's still the case.
Right.
So then 2018 happens, a year after we had our conversation, and the World Series, and you're the crew chief and you're working the game behind the plate. It happens to be game 3 of the 2018 World Series. And if people are thinking, well, why was that so unique? Well, remember the longest game in World Series history that went 18 innings? That was the game. So I have to ask you what that experience was like, basically umpiring 2 games and that counted as one.
Yeah. And if we were driving to the ballpark and you would have said, hey, you've got to work 2 games today, I'd have said, I don't think I could do that. But we go into extra innings and it was obviously very intense. The Dodgers are down 2-0, so it's as close to a must win as they can get. And so inning just starts going inning by inning, and pitching, the guys are pitching lights out. It just kind of rolls along. But for me personally, it was like, man, just stay in this. Every pitch is important. Concentrate. You're tired, but block that out. You're hungry, block that out. Let's just get it done. The great thing about it is once Muncy hit the walk-off home run, it's like all the adrenaline leaves you, and then all of a sudden, then the fatigue sets in and everything else. But during the game, I think God was just supernaturally giving me energy and effort and concentration. And then the next day I had to go out and work the right field line, and
Right.
I'm sore, but still, it's the World Series, man. It's what we work for. It's what we strive for. It's the biggest stage. And the great thing about that, when that game was over, is I knew I didn't have to work another plate job unless something went very wrong. The tough ones are during the season in June and July, when you have the 18, 19 inning game. And now 3 days later, you got to turn around and get back there again. And there's no rest in sight. At least I was like, let's get through this. And then, in a few days, I'll have the winter off.
7 hours and 20 minutes that game went, and it's got to be the craziest game you've ever been a part of, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, it was just kind of the never-ending game. And, you also knew that it could end in one swing of the bat, and it did. And so, it's one of those things, I think, when my career's over and I'm sitting around in my rocking chair telling my great grandkids about my career, that I'll think about it more and talk about it more. Right now, it's like I'm just getting to the next game and going. And like you mentioned, with the perfect games and some of the things that have happened, I really one day I'll sit back and reflect on them. But right now it's what have you done for me lately? Right, you're only as good as your last plate job. So
Sure.
we're still going.
Is 18 innings the longest game that you've ever worked in your entire career?
No, actually, I was. I remember I was working third base, which is a lot better to be at for a long game. But I think we went 20 or 21 innings one day with the Mets. I was with Alfonso Marquez was working the plate, and I think that was around 2013, 14. But it wasn't as long. It was only about 6 hours,
Okay.
only. And I remember in the minor leagues, I was doing in the Cal League, I was doing a playoff game in Stockton. And we were it was 1 a.m, and we stopped, and we said, we're just going to come back and finish the next day. It was a playoff game. And I think that was about 21, 22 innings. But again, it wasn't as long. One of the things about the World Series is we'll go 3 minutes between innings just so, we get the advertising dollars, right? We got to pay the bills, right? So because of that, think about each half innings, 3 minutes. And so that adds to the length of the game. But as the game got longer going, into the later innings, I was kind of thankful for those 3 minutes. I could kind of catch my breath and relax before getting back there and getting focused again.
And you don't have time to like grab a, protein bar, or you maybe drink a little Gatorade or some water or something. That's about it, right?
Yeah, that's it. The ball boy there with the Dodgers, Javier, he was like, I felt so bad for him because he's running me baseballs. And I think there was a record for foul balls. So he's running me baseballs, and then he's running me water between the innings. He can't rest. He's bringing me water and Gatorade, and and it was, I think about the 14th inning, I snuck into the Dodger dugout for a little bathroom break, but got in there and out of there. But yeah, it wasn't. I was able to, as soon as the game was over, I was able to eat, which is good.
Good.
But yeah, so yeah, looking back on it, it was a lot of fun. It was, I'll even see some of the Dodger players or Red Sox players now that were part of it, and we're like, man, can you believe we did that? And so, yeah, it's cool. It's kind of a shared experience we had.
Absolutely. No doubt. Now, you also had a really unique experience earlier that year. You were telling me before we started recording, the 2018 AllStar Game was a really unique experience for you. Can you kind of share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was honored to be named the crew chief for that. And, when I was a kid growing up, I really loved the All-Star games. I would always tune in. I thought it was so cool to see the players out there in their different uniforms, and they looked like they were having fun. And I got to work in 2007. I worked the right field line or the left field line in San Francisco, which was really great. My family was there being a part of it. So to be named the crew chief of this and in a place like DC was really exciting. So my grandson was there. We had a 7-man crew. One of Marvin Hudson was in replay for that, but he was with us the day before for the home run derby and some of the festivities. And I'm looking out of the locker room, and we've got these young guys who came to our CFC retreats as young minor league guys, and they end up in the All-Star game now with us, which is really cool. And Alfonso Marquez, my best friend in the game, he's out there with me. Jim Reynolds, Andy Fletcher, Mike Malinsky. It was just really cool. So we had this fun kind of time in the locker room before the game where we were just laughing and having fun. And then we go out. We had a great game. Of course, we go extra innings again in the 10th inning. And a couple home runs end it. But a cool thing happened before the game. We were coordinating with TV when the first pitch was going to be, but they had every member of every Medal of Honor winner that was living was there. And I said, hey, we may start late, but I want to go shake these guys' hands. And it was that was an honor. I'm getting choked up as I'm going around shaking these guys' hands and the sacrifices they made for their country. And it was great the way baseball honored them. But that's something that I'll never forget.
That's pretty awesome. What a great story there. Yeah, what an opportunity too, between crew chief for the All-Star Game, crew chief for the World Series. 2018 was a pretty cool year. 5 years earlier, in 2013, I mentioned it at the top, you got your doctorate in theology, and you did your dissertation on faith as a life principle for MLB umpires. I would love to hear a little bit more on, because I've never done a dissertation because I don't have a master's degree or, a doctorate or anything like that. I have a bachelor's degree, but I didn't have to do a dissertation to get my degree. What was that dissertation like for you, and why pick that topic? I mean, it kind of makes sense now that we listen to this conversation, but specifically what that dissertation was. It's an investigation of faith as a life principle.
Yeah, and I had great advisors who helped me out with that, but really, I tell the guys my dissertation really belongs to the guys on the staff, not me, because I sent out a questionnaire, and I had a lot of guys respond, over half, with very in-depth personal questions that, of course, it was anonymous, but just all of their the things that they'd experienced throughout their lives and throughout their career, and how their faith helped them handle it, and also just everything from lifestyle to relationships, marriages, and so those guys were so honest and open, and from that we were able to take statistics, the average age, just for example, here's something that we found, that first marriages, the divorce rate's a little higher, which than the national average, which is understandable because of the travel and everything. But the second marriages of umpires are like extremely low, like way above, way below the national average, and we say it's because umpires learn from their mistakes. So,
Yeah.
but even the relationships with their children, and so it was. It's a good cure for insomnia. I'll send you a copy if you want to read it. But and another thing is, a lot of guys that grumble about their job. We found that throughout the questionnaires, they love the job. They actually, all of them love the job. It's like anything else. They'll complain about the travel or but at the end of the day, they love it. And so found out a lot of things that surprised me, but the great thing is it helped me, I think, understand too the mindset of an umpire. And that was 13. I think it's time to kind of follow up on that, because since then we've instituted replay, and I think that's helped the mental stress kind of relieve. As I shared with you last time, when you walk out on the field, you don't want a play named after you. You don't want the Denkinger play, right, or the Jim Joyce play. None of it. I don't want the Barrett play.
Sure.
I'd rather have replay fix it and just have it be a footnote. So a lot of it is just diving into the stress of it, how guys handle it, how their faith comes into play. And I was just honored that so many of them were able to be so open and honest with me.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I didn't think about that. The replay point would take a lot of pressure off of an umpire when you really look at the situation, because you try to get every play right, of course, but you're human and there's human error. But it also allows for the game to be corrected because of, like you said, the Jim Joyce play, where if replay was instilled, that's a perfect game, and that doesn't go down in history as one of the tougher calls to make. So I have to imagine that's been a real, once you get through working through the kinks, and trying to perfect it, if you will, it's got to be a real nice addition to the way you guys work your games.
It is, but it brings a little added pressure that you didn't have before. Look, none of us like to fail at our jobs, and so if you make a call and maybe the guy popped off the bag by an inch, where you couldn't see that with the human eye, and then you go over to the headsets and you get overturned, it's like saying you failed. And I think we internalize that. Most people say, "What's the big deal? You couldn't see that." But we we take such pride in our jobs, and we're competitive by nature with each other. We're like, I don't want to miss who's got the least amount of misses, who has the most, and sometimes it's just bad luck. But we kind of that's the one thing I want people to hear, fans, is that we care so much about our performances and about our role in the game, that keeping the game fair, that if we miss a call, and there's some calls that can't get corrected even by replay,
right,
and nobody feels worse about it than we do. I mean, we just feel terrible. We get angry at ourselves, we get upset, and the great thing, like we said before, is though there's another game tomorrow, and and we get back at it.
I want to ask you as we wind down, because I think a lot of our listeners, who are people for the most part, are people of faith who love sports, right? And for all of us, we go into our jobs, the majority of us, maybe not myself anymore, but even during my time at ESPN, what was that like for you to be a Christian, to be on fire, but you don't want to alienate, you want to include certainly everyone, even those that think different, act different, believe different than you, but yet you still want to, like you said, reach people for Christ. And that's really the Great Commission for all of us as followers of Christ. So how do you balance that with the guys who maybe aren't interested, but still being able to kind of be friends with them and fellowship with them and love them too?
Yeah, that's the one thing that I'm really so pleased with, is that even there's guys that don't buy into it, guys that say that they're atheists, and but they respect the ministry, they respect what we're doing. And then a lot of times guys will get on the prayer calls, and you'll think, wow, he was on. I didn't think he'd ever get on. And also people have, they lose their parents, their kids are sick, they're going through a life thing, and they'll call and they'll say, "Hey man, I'm just struggling." And I love that they trust me or one of the other guys enough to pick up the phone and call. And so to answer your question, one thing that we do is I really try to get to know guys. And we're a small group. There's only 76 major league umpires plus the AAA guys that come up and down. So just the nature of the job, we're the four of us are together the whole year. Unlike basketball and hockey, those guys will kind of match up. You might work with two guys one night in Oakland, and then the next night you're working with two other guys in LA. But we travel together the whole year, so it's kind of to get to know a guy, know his family, and now you could sit around and talk about his hopes, his fears, his where he's at, what does he think about God, has he ever thought about, and you spend a whole year with a guy,
Yeah.
and you just love on him, and I think that's, as years go by, those relationships just keep growing. And I worked with my partner in 1990 in A-ball, and 20 years later he comes to a retreat and gets saved and baptized. And so I like telling guys that it's the long game for some people.
Mm-hmm.
And so just loving them and hanging out with them, and I love the fact that even guys with different worldviews feel comfortable enough to talk with me and bust my chops on the political stuff that's going on, and hey,
Sure.
what do you Christians think about this? And I'll be like, well, we think this. What do you atheists think about this? And, but at the
Yeah.
end of the day, man, we just love each other, and we're part of a fraternity.
No, that's good. That's what it's all about. As I wind down, my last question for you, Ted, I'm really curious to hear kind of like Bible study, Bible reading, and maybe what your Bible reading personally is like. Do you study particular books? Do you read through the entire Bible? What's that look like for you?
Yeah, for me, with when I was taking my seminary classes, it would pretty much be a book at a time, or systematic theology and things like that, kind of an overview. And it could get a little dry because I thought I was doing my Bible study just by doing my homework, but actually I wasn't spending time with Jesus as I'm reading this. So when I graduated, I remember I said, I'm just going to read the Bible kind of with no agenda, just go through it. And it was some rich time because just kind of started in Matthew and reading and just going through the New Testament. And now I enjoy taking guys through, and then we'll just take a book and I'll say, hey, okay, we're gonna do John. And this week you read the first 5 chapters, and we'll get together on Wednesday and we'll talk about it. And that's been really cool because I've been learning stuff from these guys as they go through and dig through commentaries, and watching them learn. And then I learn from them. It's been really cool because here I am with my seminary degree, and I think that I know everything. And what I found out about seminary is I'm just scratching the surface of the Bible.
Right.
And it's just so rich. And I think it was St. Augustine said that it was shallow enough for a baby to swim in, and deep enough for an elephant. Shallow enough for a baby to wade in, deep enough for an elephant to swim in. And that's the way I feel. It's to answer your question, I would take young guys through the Gospels, and then from there go into the letters, and from there work our way. We just finished Revelation, and my mind's frazzled, but I think I could spend the 3-4 lifetimes studying that, and still be scratching my head. But
Well, that's why it's called faith, right, Ted Barrett?
that's right. Absolutely.
He is Ted Barrett, Major League Baseball umpire. Listen, I hope we get 162 in 2021, and I hope it's a full season. Who knows what it'll look like? I'm sure it'll still look a little different, but hopefully by the end of the year, as we get down to, September and October, and we get the World Series again next year in 2021, that we're back to somewhat of a normalcy. But either way, this has been great, man. Thanks for coming back on the show, and we'll stay in touch. Hopefully get you back on again.
Yeah, that'd be great, man. I really enjoy listening to your, you get great guests on, so I'm honored to be one of them.
Thank you, sir.